She found him in a pool of black ice and darker blood, clutching two car seats like they were the only things tethering him to life. Emily Harrison had delivered thousands of meals to forgotten corners of Chicago, but she'd never delivered herself straight into the crosshairs of a mafia war, until tonight. Welcome back, family. If you love great stories, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Let's jump right into today's story. The rain came down in sheets that November night, the kind of cold, punishing rain that turned Chicago's industrial district into a waterlogged graveyard of rust and broken dreams. Emily Harrison's 12-year-old Honda Civic sputtered through puddles deep enough to swallow hubcaps, her windshield wipers losing their battle against the deluge. The GPS on her cracked phone screen insisted she was close, 200 feet to the pin, but all she could see through the rain-streaked glass were abandoned warehouses and the skeletal remains of factories that had died decades before she was born. She should have been home. Should have been curled up in her threadbare apartment with instant ramen and the kind of mindless television that helped her forget she'd dropped out of nursing school 6 months ago when her mother's medical bills devoured her tuition fund. Should have been anywhere but here, chasing a $15 delivery fee plus whatever tip a late-night sushi order to the middle of nowhere might bring. But Emily Harrison had learned that, should have been, was a luxury she couldn't afford. The order had come through at 11:47 p.m., premium sushi platter, extra wasabi, delivery to an address that made even the app hesitate before accepting. $300 worth of food. The tip alone could cover her electric bill. So she'd grabbed the insulated bag from Tanaka's, ignored the chef's raised eyebrow, and driven into the rain like she'd driven through every other impossible thing life had thrown at her. The GPS pin landed her in front of Warehouse 31, a hulking structure of corrugated metal and shattered windows that looked like it hadn't seen legitimate business since the Reagan administration. No lights. No cars. No signs of life except for the rain drumming against metal like 1,000 impatient fingers. Emily killed the engine, and the sudden silence pressed against her eardrums. Her phone screen glowed in the darkness. You have arrived at your destination. This can't be right, she muttered, but the address matched. She tried calling the customer, straight to a disconnected number. Of course. She was about to reverse out of this nightmare when she heard it, a sound that cut through the rain and straight into the part of her brain that had spent 2 years in nursing clinicals. A baby crying. Then another, their wails overlapping in a harmony of distress that made her hands freeze on the steering wheel. Emily's practical side screamed at her to leave. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, "Baby girl, your heart's too big for this world. It's gonna get you killed one day." But her hands were already reaching for the door handle. The rain soaked through her delivery jacket in seconds. She grabbed her phone, turned on the flashlight and approached the warehouse's side entrance, a door hanging half off its hinges, swaying in the wind like a broken jaw. The crying grew louder, more desperate, punctuated by a sound that made her blood run cold, a man's labored breathing, wet and rattling. "Hello." Her voice barely carried over the storm. "I have a delivery. Is someone hurt?" The crying intensified. Emily stepped through the doorway into darkness that swallowed her flashlight beam, revealing the warehouse interior in fragmented glimpses, puddles reflecting rust-stained water, overturned crates, and there, 20 feet ahead, illuminated in her trembling phone light, was a scene pulled straight from a nightmare. A man slumped against a concrete pillar, his expensive suit torn and soaked through with rain and blood, so much blood it pooled around him in a spreading darkness that caught the light like oil. In his arms, cradled with a desperate tenderness that seemed impossible given his condition, were 2 infant car seats. Inside them, 2 babies, maybe 4 or 5 months old, screamed their terror into the uncaring night. The man's head lifted. Emily's light caught his face, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that should have been weakening with blood loss but instead burned with an intensity that pinned her in place, and skin so pale it looked translucent. His left hand pressed against his side where his shirt was saturated with blood. His right hand held a gun. And that gun was now pointing directly at her chest. "Don't move." His voice was accented, Korean maybe, and despite the obvious agony he was in, it carried an authority that made her body obey before her mind could process the command. Who sent you? And nobody, Emily stammered, raising her hands, phone light wavering. I have a sushi delivery. For this address. I heard crying. Bullshit. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. Nobody orders sushi to a kill site. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a delivery driver. Look, she slowly reached for the insulated bag still slung over her shoulder, moving carefully, watching the gun track her movements. I have food. That's it. I heard babies crying. I came to help. His eyes narrowed, studying her with an intensity that felt like being dissected. The babies continued to wail, their cries growing hoarse and desperate. Emily's clinical training kicked in automatically. She could see the man's breathing was becoming shallower, his grip on the gun weakening. He had minutes, maybe less, before shock took him under. Those babies need help, she said, keeping her voice steady despite her hammering heart. You need help. I was in nursing school. I can try to stop the bleeding. Why? The question seemed to cost him. More blood on his lips. Why would you help? Because Emily Harrison had spent her whole life being told her compassion was her weakness, and she'd never learned how to turn it off. Because those babies were innocent, and whatever war this man was fighting, they hadn't chosen to be in it. Because her mother had raised her to believe that when you have the power to help someone, you have the responsibility to try. Because you're bleeding out in front of me, she said simply, and I'm not the kind of person who walks away from that. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, or a dark amusement at finding mercy in such an unlikely place. The gun lowered an inch. Then another. You're either very brave or very stupid, he said. Probably both. Emily took a step forward. But if I don't help you right now, those babies are going to watch their father die. Is that what you want? I'm not, he stopped, jaw clenching. It's complicated. Most things are. Another step. She was close enough now to smell the copper tang of blood, to see the intricate tattoos peeking out from his torn collar, patterns that looked more like art than gang markings, though she was starting to suspect this man was far more than he appeared. What's your name? A pause that stretched too long. The gun lowered completely, his arm going slack. Kong Day. Emily Harrison. She knelt beside him, already assessing the damage. Gunshot wound to the left side, possibly through the liver or intestine. Blood loss significant but not immediately fatal if she could get pressure on it. I'm going to touch you now. Try not to shoot me. His laugh turned into a cough. No promises. Her hands moved with muscle memory, finding the wound, applying pressure with her delivery jacket wadded up against the hole in his side. He hissed in pain but didn't pull away. Up close, she could see details that made her breath catch. The sharp lines of his face suggested someone used to command, to having orders followed without question. The tattoos covering his neck and disappearing beneath his shirt weren't gang marks, they were intricate, almost beautiful, like encrypted manuscripts written on skin. Who did this to you? She asked, needing to keep him conscious. People who want what I have. His eyes flickered to the car seats. The babies had quieted slightly, exhausted from crying, their little fists waving in the air. People who'll kill anyone in their way. Including a random delivery driver. Including everyone. His hand, still holding the gun, moved with sudden strength, gripping her wrist. His eyes locked onto hers with desperate intensity. You need to leave. Now. They'll come back. They'll kill you just for being here. Emily looked at the babies, one with a tiny pink onesie, the other in blue, both with impossibly small features and dark hair that stuck up in wet spikes. She looked at Kong Dae, this dangerous stranger bleeding out in front of her. She thought about her mother's voice, about playing it safe, about all the times her compassion had gotten her hurt. Then she thought about what her mother would actually do in this situation. "Can you walk?" Emily asked. "What? Can you walk?" She leaned closer, her voice gaining the kind of steel she'd learned from nurses who'd raised her when her mother couldn't. "Because I'm not leaving those babies here, and I'm not leaving you to bleed out. So you're going to let me help you to my car, we're going to get those babies, and we're all getting the hell out of here. Understand?" Kang Dae stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know exactly what I'm doing." Emily stood, offering her hand. "I'm saving your life. Now come on. We don't have much time." For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Thought he'd order her away again or maybe just shoot her for the audacity of thinking she could help someone like him. But then his hand clasped hers, grip still strong despite everything, and she was hauling him to his feet with strength she didn't know she had. He swayed, nearly taking them both down, but Emily caught him, becoming his crutch. "The babies. I'll come back for them. Can you make it to the door?" He nodded, and they began the agonizing journey across the warehouse floor. Each step sent fresh blood down his side, soaking into Emily's clothes, but they moved. They had to move. Because somewhere in the rain-soaked darkness outside, the people who'd done this were still out there, and Emily Harrison had just made the most dangerous decision of her life. She'd chosen to save a man who'd probably destroy her world. She just didn't know it yet. Getting Kang Dae to the car should have been impossible. He was at least 6 feet of solid muscle wrapped in blood-soaked designer fabric, and Emily was 5'6" on a good day with shoes that had seen better years. But desperation had a way of making the impossible merely difficult, and somehow they stumbled through the rain, his arm draped over her shoulders, her hands slick with his blood. "Stay with me," she kept saying, a mantra that had gotten her through clinicals when patients coded. "Just a little farther. Stay with me." He was muttering something in Korean, words that sounded like prayers or curses, Emily couldn't tell which. His weight increased with each step as consciousness slipped further from his grasp. By the time they reached her Honda, she was practically dragging him. She propped him against the passenger door, rain hammering them both. "Don't you dare pass out before I get those babies." His eyes focused on her with effort. "Armed, in the office. Northwest corner. They'll come. Then I better hurry." Emily sprinted back into the warehouse, her phone light cutting through the darkness. The babies were still there, miraculously, their crying reduced to exhausted whimpers. She grabbed both car seats, heavier than they looked, and ran. The Honda's back seat had never held anything more precious than pizza boxes and grocery bags. Now it cradled 2 infants who just witnessed an assassination attempt. Emily secured the car seats with shaking hands, muscle memory from babysitting her cousin's kids kicking in. The baby in pink, a girl, had stopped crying entirely, her dark eyes watching Emily with unsettling awareness. The one in blue, a boy, still fussed, his tiny face scrunched in distress. I know, Emily whispered. "We're going to get you somewhere safe." Safe. The word tasted like a lie. She hauled Kang Dae into the passenger seat, ignoring his groan of pain. Blood immediately began soaking into the fabric, but that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight's problem was getting them all somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't here. The engine turned over on the 3rd try. Emily had never been more grateful for her car's stubborn refusal to die. She peeled out of the lot, tires spraying water, just as headlights appeared in her rearview mirror. "Company," Kang Dae muttered, his head lolling against the window. "Black SUV. 2 cars back." Emily's eyes darted to the mirror. Sure enough, a black Escalade was weaving through traffic behind them, moving with purpose. Her heart hammered. What do I do? Drive. His hand fumbled in his jacket, pulling out his phone. The screen was cracked but still glowing. Take Roosevelt East. Don't stop for lights. That's insane. Do you want to live? His voice cut through her panic with the authority of someone used to being obeyed in life-or-death situations. They have orders to eliminate witnesses. You became a witness the moment you stepped into that warehouse. The words hit Emily like ice water. She'd known helping him was dangerous, but the reality of being hunted, actually hunted, made her stomach drop. She pressed the gas pedal, running a red light that made horns blare around them. The babies started crying again. Someone needs to check on them, Emily said, weaving between cars. Can you? Driving, Kong Dae said, but his hand was already reaching back, his bloodied fingers somehow gentle as they found the baby boy's tiny fist. The crying quieted slightly. Juna, he murmured in Korean. Gwenchina. Appa is here. Emily risked a glance. The fierce mafia boss who'd held a gun on her was speaking to the infant with a tenderness that cracked something in her chest. Whatever Kong Dae was, whatever he'd done, he loved those babies with a desperation that was almost painful to witness. Are they yours? She asked, running another light. The SUV was still following, relentless. Yes. A pause. No. Another pause, longer. It's complicated. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. He coughed, and more blood appeared on his lips. Emily's clinical eye noted his deteriorating condition, shock was setting in, and she needed to get real medical supplies soon or he wouldn't make it to sunrise. I'm taking you to Northwestern Memorial, she decided. You need a hospital. No hospitals. The command was absolute. They have people everywhere. Police. Doctors. We go to a hospital, we're dead in an hour. You're going to be dead in an hour anyway if I don't stop that bleeding. Then I die. His eyes met hers, dark and unflinching. But they live. That's all that matters. Emily wanted to scream. Wanted to shake him and demand why he dragged her into this nightmare. But the babies were crying again, and the SUV was gaining, and she was driving through Chicago at midnight with a dying mafia boss bleeding all over her passenger seat. My apartment, she heard herself say. I have supplies there. Medical kit from school. It's not much, but... Where? Pilsen. 20 minutes if traffic cooperates. Kong Dae made a sound that might have been a laugh. Traffic never cooperates. But he was already typing something into his phone with fingers that shook from blood loss. Go. I'll handle our tail. How are you going to? Her question was answered by gunfire. Kong Dae had rolled down the window and was firing at the SUV behind them with shocking precision despite his condition. The Escalade swerved, tires screaming, and slammed into a parked car. But Emily could already see more headlights in the distance, 2 more vehicles converging on their position. Jesus Christ, Emily breathed, flooring it. The Honda's engine whined in protest, but it moved, shooting through intersections and down side streets she knew from years of delivery routes. Behind them, the city erupted into chaos. Ahead of them, her apartment waited, a sanctuary that was about to become a battlefield. And in the back seat, 2 babies cried for a safety Emily wasn't sure she could provide. But she was going to die trying. Emily's apartment building was a 3-story walk-up in Pilsen that had seen better decades. Cracked stucco, rusted fire escapes, and a front door that never locked properly, it was the kind of place landlords forgot about and tenants couldn't afford to leave. She'd lived here for 2 years, and tonight it felt like bringing a hurricane into a house of cards. She parked in the alley behind the building, killing the lights. Kong Dae was barely conscious, his breathing shallow and labored. The babies had finally exhausted themselves into silence, though the girl's eyes were still open, watching everything with that unnerving awareness. Can you walk? Emily asked, already knowing the answer. Define walk. His attempt at humor was undermined by the blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. 3rd floor. No elevator. He actually laughed, a dark, painful sound. Of course not. Getting him out of the car took precious minutes. Getting him up 3 flights of stairs while carrying 2 infant car seats took what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes of Emily's back screaming and her arms burning and Kang Dae's weight threatening to send them both tumbling backward with every step. Her apartment door had never looked so beautiful. Inside, Emily lowered Kang Dae onto her second-hand couch, the one she'd found on Craigslist for $50. Blood immediately began soaking into the faded floral pattern. She set the car seats on the floor, and both babies immediately started fussing again. Food, Kang Dae managed. Bottles. In my jacket. Inside pocket. Emily found them, 2 bottles of formula, somehow unbroken despite everything. She also found a wallet thick with cash, 3 additional magazines for his gun, and a passport that claimed his name was James Park. She filed that information away for later. The babies needed attention. Kang Dae needed attention. Emily needed to decide which emergency took priority, and the clinical training she'd fought so hard for finally kicked in with crystal clarity. Babies first, she said aloud, because saying it made it real. They're stable. You're not. But they need food and changing, and that'll take 5 minutes. Can you stay conscious for 5 minutes? Do I have a choice? But his hand was already pressed against his wound, applying pressure like she'd taught him in the car. Emily worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done newborn rotations at 3 a.m. during clinicals. The girl, Hannah, she'd heard Kang Dae whisper to her, took the bottle eagerly. The boy, June, was fussier, but eventually latched on. Both needed changing. Emily's bathroom had never been used for diaper changes before, but desperate times called for creative solutions. She worked in a blur of wipes and formula and soft murmuring that her mother had used on her when she was small. The babies were maybe 5 months old, healthy despite their ordeal, with the same dark hair and sharp features that marked them as Kang Dae's, or at least, that's what she assumed. 7 minutes later, both babies were clean, fed, and placed in her bedroom closet, the only space without windows where they'd be safe if bullets started flying. Emily lined the bottom with every blanket she owned, creating a makeshift nest. They protested briefly, then exhaustion claimed them. Now for the hard part. Emily's medical kit was under her bathroom sink, a tackle box full of supplies she'd accumulated during nursing school. Sterile gauze, surgical tape, antiseptic, sutures she'd practiced with on chicken breasts, and a bottle of expired antibiotics she probably shouldn't have but did. Kang Dae had peeled off his jacket and was attempting to remove his shirt when Emily returned. The movement made him hiss in pain, and she saw why. The tattoos she'd glimpsed earlier covered most of his torso in intricate patterns that looked like a mixture of traditional Korean art and something else. Something that looked almost like text. "Let me," she said, helping him ease the fabric away from the wound. The bullet had entered just below his ribs on the left side, and thankfully appeared to have exited out his back, a through and through. That meant no surgery to extract anything, but it also meant twice the bleeding and twice the infection risk. "This is going to hurt," Emily warned, dousing gauze in antiseptic. "It already hurts. It's going to hurt more." She began cleaning the wound, and Kang Dae's jaw clenched so hard she could hear his teeth grinding. But he didn't cry out. Didn't pull away. Just breathed through it with the discipline of someone intimately familiar with pain. "You're good at this," he said after a moment, voice strained. "I had good teachers." Emily worked methodically, cleaning both entrance and exit wounds. "Before I had to drop out." "Why did you?" "Medical bills. My mom had cancer. Insurance didn't cover enough." The words came easier than they should have, maybe because she was elbow-deep in a stranger's blood and normal social filters had ceased to apply. "She died anyway. 6 months ago." "I'm sorry." Emily looked up, surprised by the genuine sympathy in his eyes. "Why? You didn't kill her." "No. But I know what it's like to lose someone you die for." His hand moved unconsciously toward where the babies slept. "To feel powerless while they slip away." Something passed between them in that moment, recognition, maybe. Two people who'd learned that love and loss were two sides of the same brutal coin. The baby's mother? Emily asked carefully, beginning to suture. Kang Dae's expression shuddered. Like I said. It's complicated. You're going to have to give me more than that if I'm risking my life hiding you here. He studied her for a long moment, weighing something. Then, her name was Sumin. She died giving birth to them. Or at least, that's what I was told. The way he said it made Emily's hands pause mid-suture. What does that mean? It means, Kang Dae said, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch, that in my world, Emily Harrison, the dead don't always stay dead. And the living don't always stay loyal. Outside, in the Chicago night, sirens wailed in the distance. And Emily realized she'd just stitched herself into a story that would either save her or destroy her. There was no going back now. Emily finished the last suture at 2:47 a.m. Her hands were steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones, despite the fact that she'd just performed field medicine on a man who'd held a gun on her 3 hours ago. Kang Dae had stayed conscious through all of it, his jaw clenched and his eyes fixed on some point beyond her shoulder, breathing through the pain with a discipline that spoke of practice. Done, she said, taping down the final bandage. It's not pretty, but it'll hold if you don't do anything stupid like getting into gunfights or running marathons. I'll try to restrain myself. His attempt at humor was undermined by his pallor. He'd lost a lot of blood, more than was safe, but his eyes were still sharp, still watching her with that unnerving intensity. Thank you. The simple sincerity of it caught her off guard. Don't thank me yet. You're still in shock, possibly septic, and definitely on someone's kill list. We're not out of the woods. His eyebrow raised. You could still walk away from this. Emily looked around her apartment, the blood on her couch, the baby sleeping in her closet, the gun Kang Dae had set on her coffee table within easy reach. Pretty sure I crossed that bridge when I helped you into my car. Besides, she gestured at the closet, someone needs to look after them. As if on cue, June started crying, that thin, urgent wail that signaled hunger or discomfort or the general displeasure of being an infant in a chaotic world. Emily moved automatically, retrieving him from the closet nest. He was warm and solid in her arms, his little face scrunched in distress. He's hungry again already. She checked her phone. It's only been an hour. Growth spurt. Kang Dae tried to sit up, winced, and fell back against the couch. There's more formula. In the bag I had at the warehouse. Which is still at the warehouse. Emily bounced June gently, the motion automatic from babysitting her cousin's kids. Okay, think. There's a 24-hour Walgreens 3 blocks from here. I can run and get supplies. No. The command was sharp. You go out there, you're exposed. They'll be watching stores, gas stations, anywhere we might need supplies. So what, we just let them starve. Kang Dae's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. There's someone I can call. Someone who owes me. He can bring what we need. Can you trust him? In my world, Emily, trust is a currency that costs more than money. He was already typing. But Min Jae has his own reasons to keep me alive. He'll come. Emily paced with June, who was working himself up to a full-scale meltdown. Hannah had woken too, adding her voice to the chorus. The sound of crying babies in her tiny apartment at 3 a.m. felt surreal, like she'd stepped sideways into someone else's life. Tell me something, she said, raising her voice over the crying. That sushi order. $300 to an abandoned warehouse. That wasn't random, was it? Kang Dae's silence was answer enough. Someone set me up. The realization hit her like cold water. Someone hacked the delivery app or bribed someone at the restaurant to send me there. I was bait. You were meant to be collateral damage. His voice was flat, matter of fact. They needed someone to open the warehouse doors from the outside. The delivery was a ruse to get you there, unlock the entrance, and trap me inside. If you'd stayed longer. He didn't finish the sentence. Emily felt sick. Who would do that? Who would sacrifice some random delivery driver just to? People who see everyone as expendable. Kang-dae met her eyes. People who'll burn down half of Chicago to get what they want. Which is why you need to understand, what you did tonight, saving me, it made you a target. They'll come for you now. Not because you matter to their plans, but because you're a witness. A loose end. The crying intensified. Emily grabbed a bottle from earlier, shaking it to warm the remaining formula. June latched on desperately while Hannah continued to wail. Emily felt like she was drowning, the weight of what Kang-dae was saying pressing down on her chest. My brother, she said suddenly. Mark. He's in rehab in Naperville. If they come after people I know. Give me his information. I'll have someone watch him. Someone you trust. Someone I pay very well. He was typing again, one-handed. What's the facility name? Emily rattled off the details, her mind racing. This was insane. 12 hours ago, her biggest concern was making rent. Now she was worried about hitmen and syndicate politics and whether her drug-addicted brother was about to become collateral damage in a war she didn't understand. June finished his bottle and promptly spit up on her shoulder. Emily barely noticed. Why? She asked. Why did they try to kill you? What do you have that's worth all this? Kang-dae was quiet for a long moment. Then he began unbuttoning what remained of his shirt, revealing the full extent of his tattoos. Emily had seen glimpses before while treating him, but now, in the dim light of her apartment, she could see them clearly. They weren't just art. They were patterns. Sequences. Strings of numbers and characters woven into traditional Korean imagery, tigers and dragons and phoenixes, but their scales and feathers formed coordinates, account numbers, access codes. His entire torso was a living ledger. What you're looking at, Kang-dae said quietly, is approximately $8 billion in syndicate assets. Offshore accounts, property deeds, blackmail material on 3 governments, and access codes to weapons shipments across 5 continents. Everything is encrypted in these tattoos. No copies. No backups. Just skin. Emily stared. You made yourself into a walking vault. I made myself indispensable. Or so I thought. His laugh was bitter. Turns out, indispensable just means you're worth more dead than alive, if they can get your skin intact. The horror of that statement hung in the air. They didn't just want to kill him. They wanted to literally skin him alive, preserve the tattoos, and use them to access billions in criminal assets. Emily felt her stomach turn. Jesus Christ. He's not taking my calls. Kang-dae's phone buzzed again. Min-jae's 10 minutes out. He's bringing supplies, formula, diapers, antibiotics, ammunition. When he gets here, let me do the talking. Why? Because Min-jae is loyal to me, but he's also pragmatic. If he thinks you're a liability, he'll suggest eliminating you. Cleanly. Professionally. Like it's nothing. Emily's arms tightened around June instinctively. And would you let him? Kang-dae looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted, softened almost imperceptibly. No, he said finally. No, I wouldn't. Why not? I'm nobody to you. Just some random delivery driver who got unlucky. Because, he said, his voice quiet but certain, you saved my children when you could have walked away. Because you're still here, taking care of them, when any sane person would have run. Because. He paused, searching for words. Because maybe I'm tired of a world where people like you are considered expendable. The moment stretched between them, fragile and dangerous. Then Hannah let out a particularly impressive wail, and reality crashed back in. Emily grabbed the second bottle, settling both babies in her arms with practiced efficiency. Your friend gets here, we get supplies, we figure out what comes next. Agreed? Agreed. And Kang Dae? She met his eyes over the babies' heads. If this Min Jae even suggests hurting me, I'm putting both these babies in my closet and barricading the door. Try explaining that to your syndicate. Despite everything, the pain, the blood loss, the impossible situation, Kang Dae smiled. A real smile that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. Noted. Outside, the city continued its indifferent sprawl. And somewhere in that darkness, people with guns and agendas were hunting them. But for now, in Emily Harrison's tiny apartment, 2 babies were fed and a wounded man was breathing, and that would have to be enough. Min Jae arrived at 3:17 a.m. with the efficiency of a man who'd made too many clandestine deliveries to count. Emily heard the soft knock, 2 quick taps, pause, 3 more, and watched Kang Dae's body language shift. Still wounded, still weak, but suddenly projecting an authority that filled her small apartment. Stay back, he told her. Let me see him first. Emily retreated to the bedroom doorway, both babies now miraculously asleep in her arms. She watched as Kang Dae moved to the door with painful slowness, gun in hand, and peered through the peephole before unlocking the 3 deadbolts she'd installed after her apartment was broken into last year. The man who entered was not what Emily expected. Min Jae was compact and neat, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than Emily's car, with wire-rimmed glasses and the kind of face that could disappear in a crowd. He looked like an accountant or a lawyer, someone who worked in spreadsheets and conference rooms, not blood and bullets. He carried 2 large shopping bags and a leather medical kit. His eyes went immediately to Kang Dae, scanning him with clinical precision. You look like shit, Hyungnim. I've had better nights. Kang Dae switched to Korean, speaking rapidly. Emily caught maybe 1 word in 10 from the Korean drama she'd binge-watched last year, but she understood tone. This was a debriefing, quick, efficient, all business. Min Jae's eyes flicked to Emily. Back to Kang Dae. He said something that made Kang Dae's expression harden. English, Kang Dae said sharply. She deserves to understand what's being said about her. Min Jae's expression didn't change, but something cold slithered behind his glasses. I said she's a complication. A civilian witness with no ties to the organization, no leverage to ensure silence. Pragmatically speaking, Emily interrupted, her voice steady despite her hammering heart, I'm the reason he's still alive. I'm also the only person in this room who knows how to keep him that way. So maybe you want to rethink your pragmatism. Silence. Min Jae studied her with new interest, like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected to solve. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. She has teeth. I like that. She has a name, Emily shot back. Emily Harrison. And these are Hannah and June, who need formula and diapers more than they need whatever gangster politics you two are playing. Min Jae set down his bags. Formula, diapers, antibiotics, pain medication, 4 burner phones, 50,000 in cash, and, he pulled out a gun from the medical kit. A Glock 19 with 3 magazines. For you, Miss Harrison, since you're apparently part of this circus now. Emily stared at the gun like it was a snake. I don't know how to use that. Then learn quickly. Min Jae began unpacking with methodical efficiency. Because the people hunting us don't care about your moral objections to firearms. They found the warehouse 30 minutes after you left. They know someone helped him escape. Right now, they're pulling surveillance footage from every camera within a 2-mile radius. My car, Emily said, her stomach dropping. My license plate. Already handled. I had someone steal it an hour ago, ditch it in Gary, Indiana. As far as anyone knows, you were carjacked after leaving the warehouse. Min Jae pulled out 6 cans of formula, setting them on Emily's scarred coffee table. But that buys us maybe 24 hours before they connect dots. This apartment isn't safe. Nowhere is safe, Kang Dae said, lowering himself back onto the couch with a barely suppressed groan. Not until we know who ordered the hit and why. I have theories. Min Jae pulled out a tablet, swiping through images. The warehouse was a council location, neutral ground. Someone arranged that meeting under false pretenses, knowing you'd come alone because of the babies. Someone who knows protocol. Someone internal. Sumin, Kang Dae said, and the name landed like a bomb. Emily's head snapped up. Your dead wife Sumin. The one who died in childbirth. The one who supposedly died. Min Jae pulled up a surveillance photo, a woman with sharp features and colder eyes, standing outside a Seoul hotel 2 weeks ago. Very much alive. She's been spotted 3 times in the last month. Seoul, Vancouver, and as of yesterday, Chicago O'Hare. The room seemed to tilt. Emily looked at the babies sleeping in her arms, their tiny faces peaceful in sleep. She faked her death. Her own children's mother faked her death and then tried to kill their father. Not just tried. Min Jae pulled up another image, the warehouse from aerial view, marked with tactical positions. She orchestrated a coup. 17 members of the Syndicate Council voted to remove Kang Dae from leadership. She needed him dead to finalize the transfer of power and, more importantly, to access what's on his skin. Emily's clinical mind struggled to process this. The woman who gave birth to Hannah and June had abandoned them, faked her death, and was now trying to murder their father for money and power. It was so coldly pragmatic it made her physically ill. Why? She asked. Why would she? Because I was weak. Kang Dae's voice was hollow. I wanted out. Wanted to take the children and disappear, build something legitimate. She saw that as betrayal. In our world, you don't retire. You die or you rule. She chose rule, Min Jae finished. And you became an obstacle. Emily looked at the babies again. June's little fist was curled against his mouth. Hannah's chest rose and fell with the deep breathing of infant sleep. They had no idea their existence was the center of a war that would happily consume them. What about them? Emily asked quietly. What happens to Hannah and June if we don't make it? The question hung heavy. Min Jae and Kang Dae exchanged a look that spoke volumes. There's something you need to know, Kang Dae said finally. About June. Emily's arms tightened instinctively. What about him? He's not mine. Biologically. Kang Dae's voice was careful, measured. He's Min Jae's. His son with his wife who died 3 years ago. I adopted him when Min Jae couldn't protect him. Made him mine legally, gave him my name. In our world, that made him a target, but it also made him untouchable as long as I lived. Emily looked at Min Jae, seeing him differently now. The cold pragmatist was a grieving father who'd given up his son to keep him safe. And Hannah? She asked. Mine, Kang Dae confirmed. Sumin's and mine. Which makes her the heir to everything. The organization, the assets, the power. His eyes were dark. Which also makes her the biggest target of all. What would you do if you discovered your whole life was built on someone else's lie? Drop your thoughts below. Emily felt the weight of what she'd stumbled into settling over her like concrete. 2 babies, 2 fathers, 1 mother who'd weaponized her own death, and a syndicate full of people who'd kill for power without hesitation. So what do we do? She asked. Kang Dae met her eyes. We survive. We protect them. And then, his smile was sharp as broken glass. We burn Sumin's world to the ground. Outside, the Chicago night pressed against the windows. And somewhere in that darkness, a woman who died and come back was hunting them all. The plan, such as it was, involved leaving Emily's apartment before sunrise. Min Jae had a safe house in Bridgeport, a basement unit under a Korean grocery store owned by someone who knew when to look the other way. But first, Kang Dae needed rest, the babies needed sleep, and Emily needed approximately 5 minutes to process the fact that her life had transformed into a crime thriller. She got 2 minutes. Min Jae was repacking supplies when his phone buzzed. His expression shifted so subtly that Emily almost missed it, just a tightening around his eyes, a slight pause in his movements. But Kang Dae caught it immediately. "What?" he demanded. "Security footage." Min Jae turned the phone so they could see. Grainy surveillance video showed Emily's Honda pulling away from the warehouse, license plate clearly visible. "They got this 40 minutes ago. Ran the plates. Found your registration." Emily's blood turned to ice. "My address is on my registration. Along with your name, your work history, and within another hour, every detail of your life." Min Jae was already moving, grabbing bags. "We need to leave. Now." "The babies are asleep," Emily protested. "If we move them, they'll cry." "Yes. Better crying than dead." Min Jae's voice was flat, pragmatic. "We have maybe 20 minutes before a team arrives. Possibly less." Kang Dae pushed himself up from the couch, his face gray with pain but his movements determined. "Emily, pack anything you can't lose. 1 bag. 30 seconds. Emily's mind went blank. What couldn't she lose? Her mother's jewelry box. Her nursing school textbooks, stupid, but she'd paid for them with her own money. The photo album from before her mom got sick. She shoved them all into a backpack with shaking hands, adding clothes almost as an afterthought. Min Jae was securing the babies into their car seats with the efficiency of practice. Emily watched him with June, saw the way his hands lingered just a fraction too long on the baby's head, the slight softening of his expression. A father holding his son while pretending to be something else entirely. "Cars in the back alley," Min Jae said. "Black Lexus, tinted windows. Emily drives. I ride shotgun. Kang Dae in back with the babies." "Why do I drive?" Emily asked. "Because you look innocent. Black woman in a Lexus at 4 a.m. could be coming off a late shift. Asian man in a Lexus at 4 a.m. gets profiled. We need every advantage." Emily wanted to argue with the racial calculus of it, but he wasn't wrong. She'd been pulled over twice in her Honda 4, broken taillights, that mysteriously fixed themselves. In Min Jae's Lexus, she'd be invisible in a different way. They moved like a strange military unit, Min Jae carrying both car seats, Kang Dae leaning heavily on Emily, all of them listening for the sound of approaching vehicles. The hallway was mercifully empty. The stairs were agony, each step jarring Kang Dae's wound and making him bite back groans. The alley was dark and rain-slicked, the Lexus gleaming like a promise. Emily had never driven anything this expensive. The interior smelled like leather and money, and the engine purred to life with barely a whisper. "Where?" she asked as Min Jae clicked the car seats into place. "South on Ashland. I'll navigate." Min Jae's hand rested on something in his jacket, a gun, Emily realized. He was ready to shoot through the windshield if necessary. They pulled out of the alley just as headlights appeared at the far end of the street. 2 SUVs, moving with purpose toward Emily's building. "Don't speed," Min Jae said calmly. "Don't run lights. Be boring." "Don't speed," Min Jae said calmly. "Don't run lights. Be boring." Emily's hands were welded to the steering wheel. She drove like she was taking a driver's test, hyper-aware of every movement, every turn signal, every breath. In the rearview mirror, she could see Kang Dae watching out the back window, his gun drawn and resting against his thigh. Behind them, the SUVs stopped in front of her building. "They're going in," Kang Dae reported quietly. Emily imagined them kicking down her door, guns drawn, finding her blood-stained couch and empty apartment. Finding evidence she'd been there. Finding nothing that told them where she'd gone. "Phone," Min-jae said suddenly. "Your phone. Give it to me." "What? Why?" "They can track it. GPS, cell towers, everything." He held out his hand. "Give it to me now or throw it out the window. Your choice." Emily fumbled for her phone with one hand, the other keeping the Lexus steady. Her entire life was on that phone: photos, contacts, her mom's voicemail she'd saved from before she died. But Min-jae was already rolling down the window, and Emily made the choice. She handed it over. Min-jae threw it into a passing dumpster without ceremony. "Welcome to being a ghost," he said. The babies started crying, both of them, a stereo wail that filled the car. Emily's hands tightened on the wheel. Kang Dae murmured something in Korean, trying to soothe them, but exhaustion and disruption had won. They were done being quiet. "Formula," Emily said. "They need 20 minutes to the safe house," Min-jae interrupted. "They can wait." But their crying escalated, June's face turning red with fury, Hannah's becoming a mask of infant rage. The sound drilled into Emily's skull, making it impossible to think, to focus on the road. "Pull over," Kang Dae said. "We can't," Min-jae snapped. "We're exposed. Pull over or they'll scream themselves sick." "Emily, there's a gas station ahead. Pull in. Act natural." Emily's clinical instincts agreed with Kang Dae. The babies were approaching hysterics, dangerous for infants that small. She pulled into a BP station, parking away from the lights. Min-jae was already preparing bottles from the supplies, hands moving fast. Emily took June, Kang Dae managed Hannah despite his wound, and for 60 seconds the interior of the Lexus was chaos, crying and formula and 3 adults trying desperately to calm 2 infants who'd had the worst night of their short lives. June latched onto the bottle like he was dying of thirst. Hannah took longer, her cries subsiding to hiccups and then silence as she drank. The quiet that followed felt profound. "We can't keep doing this," Emily said softly. "Running, hiding, feeding them in parking lots. They need stability. Safety. They need their father alive," Kang Dae said, his voice rough. "Everything else is negotiable." Emily met his eyes in the rearview mirror. Saw the exhaustion there, the pain, but also the absolute determination. This man would drag himself through hell for these babies. Was dragging himself through hell. "Bridgeport safe house," Min-jae said, checking his phone. 30 minutes if we leave now. They'll have supplies, security, and most importantly, no digital footprint connecting it to us. Then let's go. Kang Dae settled both babies, now drowsy from full stomachs. Before Sumin realizes we're still breathing. Emily pulled back onto the street, the Lexus carrying them deeper into the Chicago night. Behind them, her old life was being torn apart by strangers with guns. Ahead of them, a future she couldn't predict waited in the darkness. But for now, the babies were fed, Kang Dae was alive, and they were moving. It would have to be enough. The safe house was exactly as advertised, a basement apartment beneath Kim's Korean grocery, accessible through a loading dock that looked like it hadn't been used in years but opened with a biometric lock that cost more than Emily's entire education. Min-jae moved through the space with familiarity, flipping switches that revealed a bunker disguised as a dumpy apartment. Reinforced walls. Surveillance monitors showing 6 different angles of the street above. A weapons locker that made Emily's stomach turn. And, mercifully, a nursery setup that looked like it had been waiting for exactly this scenario: 2 cribs, supplies, everything 2 infants might need. "You planned for this," Emily said, settling Hannah into one of the cribs. The baby was finally, blessedly asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling with the deep rhythm of exhaustion. "We planned for everything," Min-jae replied, helping Kang Dae to a bed in the corner. "In our world, paranoia isn't a disorder. It's survival. Kang Dae collapsed onto the bed with a groan he couldn't suppress. Fresh blood had seeped through Emily's bandages, the car ride and movement had reopened something. Emily was beside him immediately, her hands already reaching for the medical kit Min-jae had brought. "I need to check your sutures," she said. "Later. Now. Or you'll bleed out while planning your next dramatic escape." She was already peeling back the bandages, assessing the damage. 2 sutures had torn. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to be dangerous if left untreated. Kang Dae watched her work with heavy-lidded eyes. "You're bossy. You're bleeding. Lie still." Emily threaded a new suture, her hands steady despite the exhaustion threatening to pull her under. Behind her, she could hear Min-jae on the phone, speaking rapid Korean. Arranging things. Moving pieces on a chessboard she couldn't see. "Emily," Kang Dae said quietly. Just her name, but weighted with something she couldn't quite identify. "What?" "Thank you. For staying. You could have run a dozen times tonight." "Should have run." Emily tied off the suture, reached for another. "Yeah, well. I'm starting to think I'm not as smart as my college transcript suggested." "You're smart enough to know this ends badly for most people involved. But not for those babies." She met his eyes. "That's what you're really asking, isn't it? Will I stay for them?" Kang Dae's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through the armor. "Will you?" Emily thought about June's tiny fist wrapped around her finger. About Hannah's dark eyes watching her with that unnerving awareness. About 2 infants who'd been born into a war they didn't choose and didn't understand. "Yeah," she said finally. "Yeah, I'll stay for them." The moment stretched between them, fragile and dangerous. Then Min-jae's voice cut through it like a knife. "We have a problem." Both Emily and Kang Dae turned. Min-jae was holding his phone, his expression grim. "Your brother, Emily. Mark Harrison, currently at Lakeside Recovery Center in Naperville." Emily's heart stopped. "What about him?" "He's not there. According to facility records, he checked himself out 3 days ago. Against medical advice. That's impossible. I called him last week. He was." Emily's voice died as she realized what Min-jae was really saying. "No. No, he wouldn't. The warehouse hit had 4 shooters." Min-jae pulled up photos on his tablet, surveillance from the warehouse, grainy but clear enough. "We identified 3. Chinese syndicate contractors, known associates of Sumin's Vancouver operation. But the 4th. He swiped to enhance an image. Emily's world tilted. The man in the photo was thinner than she remembered, hollow-eyed and desperate-looking, but unmistakably her brother. Mark, wearing tactical gear and carrying an assault rifle, positioned on the warehouse's eastern entrance. "No," Emily whispered. "He's in rehab. He's getting clean. He wouldn't. He owes money." Min-jae's voice was clinical, detached. 60,000 to a loan shark connected to the syndicate. They gave him a choice, work off the debt or die trying. The warehouse hit was supposed to be his ticket out. Emily felt like she was drowning. Her brother, her stupid, self-destructive, addict brother who she'd bailed out a dozen times, had been one of the people trying to kill Kang Dae. Had been part of the setup that nearly got her killed. "Where is he now?" Kang Dae asked, his voice hard. "Unknown. He disappeared after the warehouse. Probably realized the hit failed and went to ground." Min-jae looked at Emily with something that might have been sympathy. "I'm sorry. But you need to understand, if he surfaces, if he makes contact with you, it's likely a trap. Sumin will use him to get to us." Emily's hands were shaking. She looked at them, still stained with Kang Dae's blood, steady enough to stitch wounds and feed babies, but now trembling with the weight of this betrayal. "He's my brother," she said numbly. He's a liability, Min-jae replied. One we can't afford. Are you saying? Emily couldn't finish the sentence. I'm saying that if Mark Harrison shows up, we treat him as hostile until proven otherwise. Min-jae's eyes were cold. That's not negotiable. Emily wanted to scream. Wanted to defend Mark, to explain that addiction made people do terrible things but it didn't make them terrible people. But the words stuck in her throat because she'd had this exact conversation with herself 50 times before, after Mark stole her rent money, after he pawned their mother's jewelry, after he missed Mom's funeral because he was too high to function. How many chances did one person deserve before you admitted they were never going to change? If he contacts me, Emily said carefully, I'll tell you. But I won't let you kill him. Not without talking to him first. Emily, Kang Dae started. No. That's my line. I've risked everything for you and those babies. You owe me this. Her voice was steel-wrapped in exhaustion. My brother gets a chance to explain. After that. She swallowed hard. After that, we'll see. Min-jae and Kang Dae exchanged a look. Some wordless communication passed between them. Finally, Kang Dae nodded. One chance, he said. But Emily, if he's working for Sumin, if he puts those babies at risk. I'll pull the trigger myself, Emily said, and meant it. The words hung in the air like a curse. Outside, Chicago was waking up, early morning traffic, the groan of the city stirring to life. Inside the bunker, 3 people who'd become unlikely allies watched each other and wondered who'd survive the day. In the cribs, June and Hannah slept on, innocent of the violence being planned in their names. And somewhere in the city, Mark Harrison was either hiding or hunting. Emily didn't know which option terrified her more. Emily woke to the sound of breaking glass. She'd fallen asleep in a chair beside the cribs, too wired to actually rest but too exhausted to stay conscious. Now she was on her feet, heart hammering, as Min-jae appeared from the surveillance room with a gun in each hand. 3 contacts, north entrance, he said, his voice clipped and professional. Moving fast. They found us. How? Kang Dae was already up, moving despite the pain that creased his face. We were careful. Doesn't matter how. They're here. Min-jae tossed Emily the Glock he'd given her earlier. You remember what I showed you? Safety off, aim center mass, squeeze don't pull. Emily's hands closed around the gun automatically, but her mind was screaming. This wasn't real. Couldn't be real. She was a nursing student turned delivery driver, not a. The basement door exploded inward. What happened next occurred in fragments, like a film reel with missing frames. Men in tactical gear pouring through the entrance. Min-jae firing with mechanical precision, dropping the first one instantly. Kang Dae moving despite his wound, using an overturned table for cover. The deafening percussion of gunfire in the confined space. And Emily, frozen with a gun in her hand and 2 babies screaming behind her. Emily, move. Kang Dae's voice cut through her paralysis. She moved. Grabbed both car seats, babies and all, and ran for the panic room Min-jae had shown her during the brief tour. A reinforced closet with a steel door and enough supplies to wait out a siege. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped June's carrier, but she made it inside, slamming the door and engaging the lock. The babies screamed. Outside, gunfire continued in short, controlled bursts. Emily set the carriers down and pressed her hands over her ears, trying to block out the sounds of violence, but it was useless. Every shot made her flinch. Every shout made her imagine Kang Dae or Min-jae dying on the other side of that door. Then, suddenly, silence. Emily waited, hardly breathing. The babies had exhausted themselves into hiccuping sobs. Her hands were still wrapped around the Glock, though she didn't remember raising it. A knock on the panic room door. 3 taps, pause, 2 more. The signal Min-jae had taught her. Emily, it's clear. Open up. She recognized Kang Dae's voice but hesitated. In movies, this was always a trick. The bad guys forcing the good guys to lure out the Emily, please. We need to move. Now. She opened the door. The safe house looked like a war zone. 2 bodies on the floor, both in tactical gear. Blood spattered across the walls. Min Jae was already packing, moving with urgent efficiency despite a gash across his cheek. Kang Dae was pale, fresh blood soaking through his shirt, but upright and functional. What happened to the third one? Emily asked. Ran when his partners went down. Kang Dae was gathering weapons, shoving them into a duffel bag. Which means Sumin knows we're here, knows we survived, and knows how many of us there are. We have maybe 5 minutes before reinforcements arrive. Emily's clinical training kicked in despite the chaos. You're bleeding again. Badly. I'll bleed in the car. Help Min Jae with the babies. They move like a choreographed dance, grab supplies, secure babies, weapons check, out the back and trance into an alley where a different car waited. This one was a nondescript Toyota, the kind that disappeared in traffic. Emily found herself in the driver's seat again, Min Jae navigating, Kang Dae in back with the babies and a hand pressed against his reopened wound. Where? Emily asked, starting the engine. Storage facility. West Loop. Min Jae was on his phone again, typing rapidly. We have units there. Off books, clean. We can regroup, reassess. Emily pulled into traffic, her hands steadier now despite everything. She'd crossed some threshold back in that bunker, from civilian to participant, from victim to survivor. The gun Min Jae had given her was tucked in her waistband now, and she knew if she had to, she could use it. That realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like acceptance. How did they find us? She asked. Good question. Min Jae's voice was tight. That location was secure. Only 3 people knew about it, me, Kang Dae, and, he stopped abruptly. And? Emily prompted. And my contact who arranged the supplies. Min Jae's jaw clenched. Son of a bitch. He sold us out. Or Sumin got to him, Kang Dae said from the back. Either way, we can't trust the usual channels. No more safe houses. No more contacts. We're on our own. Emily glanced in the rearview mirror. Kang Dae was ghost pale, his breathing labored. The wound had definitely reopened, possibly worse than before. He needed rest, antibiotics, fluids. None of which they'd get while running. He needs a hospital, she said. No hospitals, Kang Dae and Min Jae said simultaneously. Then he needs somewhere to actually rest. Not another safe house that isn't safe, not a car, not, Emily's voice rose despite herself. He's going to die if we keep running like this. You know that, right? All the bulletproof vests and secret bunkers in the world don't matter if he bleeds out from an infection. Silence. Then Min Jae said quietly, she's right. I'm fine, Kang Dae protested weakly. You're not fine. You're dying by degrees. Min Jae met Emily's eyes in the mirror. But she's right about something else too. We can't keep running. Sumin has more resources, more people, more everything. She'll hunt us until we're dead or she is. So what do we do? Emily asked. Kang Dae's voice came from the back, rough but determined. We stop running. We set a trap. And we end this. Emily's hands tightened on the wheel. What kind of trap? The kind where we give Sumin exactly what she wants. Kang Dae shifted, grimacing. We let her think she's won. Draw her out into the open. And then. A gunshot shattered the rear window. Emily screamed, the Toyota swerving as she fought for control. In the mirror, she saw a motorcycle, no, 2 motorcycles, pulling up alongside them, riders in black helmets with weapons drawn. "Drive!" Min-jae shouted, returning fire through the broken window. Emily floored it. The Toyota wasn't built for high-speed chases. It shuddered and complained as she pushed it past 70, weaving through traffic on the expressway. The motorcycles kept pace easily, firing in controlled bursts that sparked off the frame. In the back, Kang Dae had covered the babies with his body, shielding them with himself despite his wound. Blood dripped onto June's car seat, and Emily felt something inside her crystallize into pure rage. These people, Sumin and her syndicate and all their power games, they were threatening children. Babies who'd done nothing except exist. Emily had spent her whole life being careful. Being safe. Following rules and playing by society's expectations. And where had it gotten her? Broke, grief-stricken, and driving through Chicago with a dying man and 2 infants while assassins shot at them. Fuck careful. She yanked the wheel hard right, taking an exit at 65. The Toyota's tires screamed. One motorcycle overshot the exit. The other followed, but Emily was already turning again, plunging into the industrial maze of the West Loop with the kind of reckless abandon that came from having absolutely nothing left to lose. "Storage facilities 2 blocks ahead," Min-jae said, reloading. "Big blue building. Code is 4-7-9-2. Emily saw it, a massive self-storage complex, chain-link fence and rolling gates. She aimed for the entrance like a missile, hitting the call button and screaming, 4-7-9-2, into the intercom. The gate rolled open with agonizing slowness. The motorcycle was right behind them. Emily punched the gas, shooting through the gap with inches to spare. The motorcycle tried to follow. And Min-jae shot the rider point blank through the open window as they passed. The bike went down, spinning across the pavement. Emily didn't stop to watch. She drove deep into the storage complex, following Min-jae's directions to a unit at the back corner. They piled out, grabbing babies and bags and weapons, and Min-jae keyed open a unit that revealed not storage but another safe room, this one stocked like a military bunker. They collapsed inside, and Min-jae slammed the rolling door down behind them. For exactly 10 seconds, there was silence except for heavy breathing and the baby's frightened whimpers. Then Kang Dae collapsed. Emily caught Kang Dae before he hit the concrete floor, her arms barely managing his weight. Blood soaked through his shirt, too much blood. His eyes were half closed, skin like wax, pulse thready under her fingers. "No," she said firmly, lowering him down. "Absolutely not. You don't get to die after everything." Min-jae was already pulling medical supplies from the storage locker, 4 bags, antibiotics, surgical staples. "He's septic. Infection spreading. Then we treat the infection." Emily's hands moved on autopilot, ripping open Kang Dae's shirt to expose the wound. The sutures had torn completely, and the surrounding tissue was inflamed, angry red spreading from the entry point. "Get that 4 started. Push fluids and broad-spectrum antibiotics. Now." They worked in tandem, Emily cleaning and resuturing while Min-jae established 4 access with the steady hands of someone who'd done field medicine before. The babies cried in their car seats, but Emily couldn't stop to comfort them. Kang Dae's life was measured in minutes. "Stay with me," she murmured, echoing the words she'd said in the warehouse a lifetime ago. "Come on, Kang Dae. Those babies need you." "I need you too," her voice cracked. "Just stay." His eyes flickered open, focusing on her with effort. "Emily. Don't talk. Save your energy. Have to, tell you." He coughed, and Emily's heart clenched at the blood on his lips. "If I don't make it. You're making it. End of discussion." "Stubborn," he whispered, almost smiling. "You have no idea." Emily finished the last suture, her hands rock-steady despite the tears blurring her vision. "I didn't save your life 3 times just to lose you now. The antibiotics started flowing. Emily monitored his vitals, watching the numbers stabilize incrementally. Not out of the woods yet, but fighting. Still fighting. Min Jae's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression went carefully blank. "We have a visitor." Emily's hand went to the Glock at her waist. "How many?" "One." He pulled up the security feed on a tablet. "And you're not going to believe who it is." The screen showed a woman standing at the storage facility entrance, sharp features, cold eyes, expensive coat despite the early morning chill. Beside her, looking hollow and desperate, was Mark Harrison. Emily's world tilted. "No. Your brother led her here," Min Jae said flatly. "Either he sold us out or she followed him. Either way. I'll go." Emily was already standing, checking the Glock's magazine. "She wants to talk, we'll talk." "Emily, that's suicide," Kang Dae rasped from the floor. "Then it's suicide." She met his eyes. "But I'm done running. Done hiding. She wants to threaten children for power. She can do it to my face." She walked out before either of them could stop her. The storage complex was eerily quiet in the pre-dawn light. Emily's footsteps echoed off metal doors as she approached the entrance where Sumin waited. Up close, Kang Dae's supposedly dead wife was beautiful in the way sharp knives were beautiful, elegant and deadly. Mark stood beside her, hands zip-tied, a gun pressed against his spine. He looked worse than Emily had ever seen him, gaunt, shaking, eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion or withdrawal or both. "Emily," he croaked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They said they'd kill me if I didn't." "Shut up, Mark." Emily kept her eyes on Sumin. "You wanted a meeting. Here I am." Sumin smiled. "The brave little delivery driver. I've heard so much about you. The woman who saved my husband's life. How noble." The word dripped with contempt. "Your husband. The man you tried to murder. The father of your children. Those children are leverage, nothing more." Sumin's voice was ice. "In my world, Emily Harrison, love is weakness. Sentiment is suicide." Kang Dae forgot that. Made himself vulnerable. Made himself expendable. "He's not expendable to me." Touching. Sumin pulled out her phone, showing Emily a photo, the warehouse, the original site of the ambush. "The Syndicate Council meets there tonight. Final vote on leadership. Kang Dae either appears and faces execution, or I assume control by default. Either way, I win." Emily's mind raced, piecing together the trap. "You want him to come to you. Want him to walk into an ambush he knows is coming. I want him to have the courage to die with dignity." Sumin's eyes were flat, reptilian. "Or I start killing everyone he loves. Starting with your brother." The gun pressed harder against Mark's spine. He whimpered. Emily felt the weight of the Glock at her waist. Felt the weight of every choice that had led her here, to a storage facility at dawn, holding a gun and facing down a woman who'd weaponized motherhood itself. "Counteroffer," Emily said. "We all go to that warehouse tonight. Council witnesses everything. And we settle this the way your world understands, with evidence and blood." Sumin's eyebrow raised. "You're challenging me. I'm offering you a stage." Emily's voice was steel. "You want to prove Kang Dae's weak? Prove it in front of everyone. Let the council see who really has the strength to lead." For a long moment, Sumin studied her. Then, surprisingly, she laughed. "You have audacity. I'll grant you that." She checked her watch. 8 p.m. The warehouse. "If Kang Dae doesn't show, I execute your brother on live stream and send hunters for those babies. If he does show." She smiled. "Well. We'll see who walks out." She released Mark with a shove. He stumbled toward Emily, sobbing. Sumin turned and walked away, her heels clicking against concrete like a countdown. Emily caught Mark as he collapsed. "You stupid, stupid idiot. I know. I know. I'm sorry. They said they'd pay off my debt if I just. Shut up and help me get back inside." They made it to the storage unit where Min-jae had a gun trained on Mark before Emily could blink. But she stepped between them. "He's alive because Sumin wants him as bait. We use that." "Use it how?" Min-jae demanded. Emily looked at Kang Dae, still pale, still weak, but conscious and listening. "You said you wanted to set a trap. Give Sumin what she wants and then destroy her." She pulled out her phone, one of the burners Min-jae had provided. "Well. Let's give her a show she'll never forget." Kang Dae's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Tell me your plan." 6 hours later, the warehouse was exactly as Emily remembered: concrete pillars, pools of standing water, the ghost of blood where Kang Dae had nearly died. But now it was filled with people. 15 members of the Syndicate Council, seated in a semicircle. Sumin at the center, regal and confident. And Emily, Kang Dae, and Min-jae walking through the entrance with 2 car seats and a plan that would either save them or destroy them all. Kang Dae looked like death walking, pale, hollow-eyed, but upright through sheer force of will. His suit was immaculate, hiding the bandages beneath. His gun was visible at his hip. His tattoos were on full display, rolled sleeves showing the encrypted fortune written on his skin. "Members of the council," he said, his voice carrying despite his weakness. "I stand accused of weakness. Of sentiment. Of making choices that endangered our organization." He paused. "My accuser is my wife, Sumin. Who you all believed was dead." Murmurs rippled through the council. Sumin's expression didn't change. "She faked her death," Kang Dae continued, "to orchestrate a coup. To turn you against me while positioning herself for power. She's told you I'm weak. Compromised. Unfit to lead." He stepped forward. "Let me show you what she's really done." Min-jae activated a projector. Images filled the warehouse wall: bank transfers, communications, evidence of Sumin's 2-year plan to undermine Kang Dae, to steal syndicate assets, to eliminate rivals. And most damning, records showing she'd sold classified information to rival organizations, betraying them all for personal gain. The council erupted in angry voices. Sumin stood, her composure cracking. "Lies. Fabricated. The money trail is real," Min-jae said coldly. "Your offshore accounts. Your deals with the Chinese syndicate. Your betrayal." 3 council members stood, guns drawn, aimed at Sumin. She moved faster than Emily expected, pulled her own gun, fired. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Council members shooting each other, old grudges settling in blood. Kang Dae moving despite his wound, returning fire with mechanical precision. Emily grabbed the car seats and ran for cover behind a pillar. Mark was there, shaking but alive. "What do we do?" "We survive." Emily pulled out the Glock. "Watch the babies." She stepped out and fired. The recoil shocked through her arms, but the shot went wide, intentionally. She wasn't trying to kill. Just distract. Just survive. Sumin emerged from the chaos, gun trained on Kang Dae. "You think evidence matters? You think any of them care about betrayal?" She laughed, wild and bitter. "This world was built on betrayal." "Then let's burn it down," Kang Dae said. And shot her. Not fatally. In the shoulder, precise and controlled. Sumin went down, gun clattering away. The shooting stopped. Bodies littered the warehouse floor, 5 council members dead, including the 3 who'd supported Sumin's coup. The survivors stared at Kang Dae with something between fear and respect. He walked to Sumin, standing over her. You wanted strength? Here it is. I choose mercy. I choose evolution. I choose a syndicate that doesn't sacrifice children for power. He looked at the council. Vote now. Me or chaos. One by one, they knelt. Emily watched, holding babies who'd survived a war they hadn't chosen, and felt something shift. This wasn't victory. It wasn't happy ending. It was survival, messy, complicated, bought with blood and choices that would haunt her. But the babies were safe. Kong Day was alive. And Emily Harrison, former nursing student, delivery driver, accidental warrior, had learned that sometimes saving lives meant being willing to take them. 3 months later, Emily stood in a nursery that didn't have reinforced walls or weapons lockers. Just cribs and toys and morning sunlight streaming through actual windows. Hannah and June babbled happily, now 8 months old and blissfully unaware of the empire being rebuilt around them. Kong Day appeared in the doorway, still moving carefully but healed. Ready? Emily nodded. Together, they walked into the conference room where the reformed Syndicate Council waited, stripped of its most corrupt members, operating now with oversight and the kind of transparency that would have been impossible before. It wasn't redemption. But it was something better, evolution. And as Emily took her seat beside Kong Day, as they began restructuring an organization from violence towards something almost legitimate, she realized her mother had been wrong about one thing. Her too big heart hadn't gotten her killed. It had gotten her exactly where she needed to be.
Thank you for being here and watching until the very end. Your support keeps this channel alive and growing. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more. And don't go anywhere. I've got another amazing video ready for you. Just click what's showing on your screen right now. See you in a moment.